guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we are working on the Camaro's air conditioning system. Now my last video I went and installed the new accessory drive. So today I'm going to be charging up the AC and also installing a new oil catch can. Let me just show you all the parts I picked up over here. So today we're going to be replacing the condenser, the evaporator, and the accumulator here. Now I went on eBay and picked up this little guy here. Here's the one I had before. This is also an eBay catch can, but this one was a lot cheaper. I think I paid like 20 bucks for this one. This one cost me 50, and you could see just how much smaller this is. It's literally like half the size. And this little guy is gonna fit perfectly once I get the breather filter out of here, right in there. And that's going to take care of my catch can problem. Here's the exact one I use. You could probably just go on there and search K-Motor catch can. It was only like 50 bucks, and it really does feel like a nice part. It has a good weight to it. It comes with a few things in the box here. They give you a breather filter, a little mounting bracket, and then a bunch of different size fittings. So these just unscrew and you can put on the size you need. But before I get into that, let me just fill you in on what's going on with the air conditioning. Now when I had the system evacuated, before I went and put the accessory drive on, I noticed that removing the orifice tube, that there's a lot of like sand and like grit inside the system. And then I went and pulled the hose off of the condenser here, and there was just like a bunch, it was just clogged with like little metal shavings and like mostly like gritty sand kind of material. And I'm pretty sure that is from the accumulator, the desiccant bag inside breaking up and just throwing all that crap into the system. So before I recharge this, especially since I have a brand new compressor, I'm going to go and replace this stuff. Now you can have this stuff flushed out. If you go to like a shop and they have like an air conditioning machine, they could probably do it for you, or you could just take everything apart yourself and go in there with compressed air and literally blow everything out. The evaporator I had to change anyway, just because the orifice tube was like stuck in there and I couldn't get it out. And then when I finally did, it broke in half and I had to drill it out a little bit. I still couldn't get it completely out. So the evaporator has to get changed regardless. The accumulator you want to change anyway. This is actually a new one. I threw this on when I did the engine bay painting, but the system has been sitting with air in it for so long. I'm going to change it again anyway. You get these online on Rock Auto for like under 20 bucks. So pretty much anytime you open up the AC system, it's really a good idea to change that. And then for the condenser, I'm replacing that just because, like I said, it's filled with like grit and desiccant material, and I'm not going to spend any time trying to get it all out. So we got a new compressor, we're gonna have a new condenser, new evaporator, new accumulator. I went and got another orifice tube. Now, being my system is running R134, it's not running R12 anymore, like the original 80s stuff. A cheap mod is to go and put this orange Ford orifice tube in there. It just works better with the R134, makes it a little bit cooler. And then if you are still running the stock 80s AC and compressor and everything, and you do want to retrofit it for 134A, you have to go and pick up this little conversion kit. Pretty much it comes with these two fittings, and they just screw on to the R12 fittings like so, and that allows you to connect the gauges for the 134A. With that being said, it really is a good idea if you are converting to 134A to go and bring this to a shop that has the proper equipment to flush out and evacuate all of the R12 before you go and retrofit it for the 134A. You want to make sure you get the R12 oil out and all the refrigerant, replace the accumulator, and then put on the fittings and have it charged up. But if you already did the conversion like me and you've been running 134A for a while and you're just you know, either doing maintenance of the system or you had to change the compressor or something, then that's already taken care of. You don't have to worry about it. So I think I'm going to get started with the evaporator. You can remove this without taking the whole box out. Pretty much the box is just split, so this top piece here is going to come off. Before we do that though, we're going to pull the accumulator off of here. It's just the line here, the nut back here, and then once that's out, the high side nut at the bottom, and then it's just about removing this top fiberglass cover here, this comes off, and then you can pull the evaporator, just slide it right out through the top there. But before you do go ahead and do this, you want to make sure the system is evacuated and there is no pressure in it. As I said, that already has been done, so I am ready to start replacing stuff. Okay, so the top of the AC box is off, and here's the evaporator. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly as easy as it looked. Real time, it only took probably like under 10 minutes to get this thing out. There's just the two 10mm bolts at the top, and then multiple little 7mm that just hold it to the bottom of the box. But once that's out, all you gotta do is lift it on out. If you're doing this on your 3rd gen and you never had this box off, there's probably going to be a lot of dirt and leaves and crap in there. So just get in there with some compressed air, blow it all out. Being these cars are so old, they don't have cabin air filters, so any dirt and crap is going to come through the blower and get in there. If you do have a leak in the system and you can't find the source of it, this is probably going to be the cause, because all that crap gets in here, and you can see on mine how it's kind of corroding here, and then eventually that's going to lead to a leak, especially if you're talking about a 30-year-old car. Mine looks actually pretty good. I mean, there's little parts where there's like dirt stuck in it, and like a little bit down here, but I did have this out before, so I had it cleaned out. But as far as leaks go, it looks like it's pretty good. I don't see anything leaking. There's no oil coming out. As I said, the only reason I am replacing this is due to this piece here, where the orifice tube sits, being kind of bent and messed up, and I can't get the broken tube out of there. But I got my new part right here, and installing this is as simple as removal. Before I do that, I'm just going to pop the orifice tube in. Now, the way you do this, you want to have the net, the big part of the net, facing the front of the car. So this is going to be sitting in the car like this, and we're going to be putting the tube in this way. You can see it'll sit in there right like that, and then it stops right where there's that little press mark. So I got some AC oil, and I'm just going to dip it in the oil, just to get these O-rings lubed up so it slides in no problem. Some needle nose, and this is the direction you want to install it. And that is bottomed out. You can see right there. You want it just below that second lip. That's all there is to it. Orifice tube is installed. Oh, but one more thing to know. If you're new to AC systems, removing this tube is pretty much going to tell you the health of your system. If you pull this out and that little net is filled with like metal shavings or dirt, or just like completely clogged up, then that is going to indicate there's a problem somewhere in the system, whether it be the accumulator desiccant coming apart or the compressor just failing. But if you do pull this out and you do see that it is severely clogged up, you are going to want to address that problem before you go and install new parts and recharge the system. The evaporator is done. Next step, I'm going to be removing the condenser. To do that, you just want to remove the two hoses over here. There's one at the top, one at the bottom. I just have a vice grip on the condenser side to keep it from twisting. So I got the fittings off, and I also went and removed the whole hard line going from the condenser over to the evaporator just because I want to go and blow this out with compressed air, make sure I get any dirt and sandy debris out of there. So it's a few days later and I have the condenser installed. Now we're going to go on to putting the new receiver dryer in, as well as the remaining hoses. At this point I already went and flushed out the hard line with compressed air. I also flushed out the high side hose coming off the compressor, and then I also just got in the mail the other day my new AC hose for the low side. The site was called coldhose.com. You go on the website and you can enter all the information you want, how long you want the rubber hose to be, and which fittings you want. So I went on their site, I filled that out, and I ordered this thing on Thursday and it actually came in Saturday afternoon. So the shipping was extremely fast. And all said and done, this thing cost me about 45 bucks. I measured it specifically so it's gonna mount onto the low side here, and then I'm just gonna loop it around, and then it's gonna connect to the accumulator once that's installed. So I have all my hoses, everything's flushed out. I got the new condenser in, new evaporator in, new compressor, new accumulator. So literally my whole system is basically new. I mean, everything's pretty much been replaced aside from these two hoses here, this hard line and this hose here. But the next step is going to be to put the accumulator in, and then I'm going to add oil to the system. Now, I'm not exactly sure how much this factory third gen is supposed to take. I believe it's like 6 ounces of oil from empty. This is the R12 spec here. It doesn't really say anything about oil, but the charge for the R12 was 2.2 pounds. As far as charging up the R134A system now, with the different compressor and the shorter hose, I'm not sure how the capacity is going to change. I'm probably going to start with like 1.5 pounds and then work my way up from there depending on how cold it is and what the pressures are reading. But before we get into that, let's bolt this guy up, get the hard line back in, and then we'll pour the oil into the compressor, get that in the system, and we can vacuum it down. So I got all the hoses and the accumulator on, went and put the hard line in. I kind of bent it a little bit just so it clears everything. Put the little hold down screw in that I put in to keep it secured to the frame. I got the other side on the evaporator, and then I just went and screwed the accumulator on. I have my high side hose coming off the compressor connected back onto the condenser, and then I have my new custom hose mounted on the compressor. Now this is just going to come around like this, loop, and connect like that. You can see that is a lot neater than when I had it before, running all the way down along the battery and then back to the accumulator. So right now, next step is going to be to put the oil in. As I said, I believe the system takes 6 ounces of oil. Now to do this, I'm just going to pour it into the suction side of the compressor here. So I'm going to pour a little in, and then I'm just going to spin the clutch, and that's going to pump it through and into the system. Once that's done, I could just pop this back on the accumulator, and we'll be ready to take the vacuum pump gauges and vacuum down the system. Alright, so I just finished putting oil in the system, got the hoses on, everything's pretty much good to go. We're ready to vacuum it down. I put almost a full bottle in just because the compressor is going to have oil in it from the factory, so I didn't put the whole bottle in, but it did take most of the bottle. I spun it around, the suction line pulled it in. I simply put my custom hose on here, tightened everything down, and I just put a zip tie here to hold this guy up to keep him from rubbing on the compressor. But this hose fits great. I already checked, it does clear the hood, It's not rubbing. I'm gonna put the specs of this hose and the website I use down in the description. So the part number for the 2 fittings and the length I use 16 inches of hose, just in case you're using this exact setup and you want to make this exact hose that I did. Like I said, it costs 45 bucks ship. Great deal, fits perfectly, and looks a lot better than the Hawk's really long LS swap hose. All right, so it's the next day and we're ready to recharge the system. Now I have my gauges on the car, my vacuum pump's out, hoses are on the car. I'm just gonna go and open these valves up. Now what we're gonna be looking for is we want the low side here to get all the way down to 30 inches of vacuum. As long as it gets down to 30 and it holds it for a relatively long time, maybe like a half hour, an hour, we know there's no substantial leaks in the system and we're gonna be ready to go ahead and charge it up. So I'm just gonna flick the pump on right now. Both my valves are closed, but I'm just gonna open them up. And we're gonna watch the low side here pull a vacuum. You see it dropped relatively quickly. But we're looking for the needle to get all the way down to 30. It's going to take a few minutes before it reaches full vacuum. Right now it's sucking all the air out of the system, and once it reaches the capacity where everything's out and it's just on full vacuum, then we're going to be seeing 30 inches. And you want to let that run for maybe like at least 15 minutes, a half hour, depending on how long the system has been open. There could be like a lot of moisture in it, and you're going to want to do it longer. Everything here has been replaced, like the evaporator, the accumulator, the condenser, all that stuff was sealed out of the box. So when I installed it yesterday, I just pulled the plugs off and quickly popped the hoses on. So I shouldn't have that much moisture in it. So I'm just going to leave this going for like a half hour, and then after that I'm going to turn it off, close the valves, and we're going to be looking at this gauge to see if the needle goes back up to 0 and loses vacuum. If it stays where it is, we know we have no leaks and we're ready to charge. If it drops down, then we know that there's a leak somewhere and we're gonna have to find that before charging it up. I'm just gonna let this do its thing, let it vacuum down, and while that's going on, I'm gonna go through the wiring and how to actually wire up the AC. Now there's quite a few ways you could do this. I'm just gonna run through the way that I did it, you know, the exact way I wired it up and how it's working for me. Depending on what PCM you use, it might be a little bit different. I have a 4th Gen LS1 PCM, which has the red and blue connectors. So that's really the only way that I can tell you how to wire it up using that PCM, because that's what I did. But I am gonna go through that and show you exactly what I did. So hopefully you could get the AC working in your LS Swap 3rd Gen. All right, so here's the wiring diagram that I used. This is the exact diagram I used to wire up the AC in my car. Now I printed this out off 3rdgen.org, and this has everything you need to get the AC working. Now the first thing I figure I'll start with is the HVAC controls. The way the AC works with the LS swap, it depends on what harness you get. I mean, some harnesses will probably have it already built in, so you won't have to do this. But the harness I got didn't have it, and most of them don't. So if you get one that doesn't have AC like this, you're gonna need this diagram here. I'm gonna put a link to it in the description. So first thing the PCM is gonna be needing, it's gonna need a request. In order to do that, we're gonna have to take the green wire in the back of the 3rd Gen HVAC panel, and we're gonna have to run that to the PCM. Now, that's what's gonna tell the PCM that we wanna turn the AC on, and then from there, it's gonna check the readings of the pressure sensor and all that. But first, we need a signal going to the PCM telling it turn the AC on, and that's where this green wire is gonna come in. Now, I pulled my controls out here to show you exactly which wire you're gonna be needing. So very simply, all I did was this green wire right here. This is the old 3rd Gen AC request wire. I just cut the 3rd Gen side off and then added this black wire. And from here, I ran it down and to the PCM. The PCM's up in the dash. I'll get there in a second, but that's the first wire that you're gonna wanna run to the PCM. You can see in the diagram, everything's labeled what pins and which connectors you're gonna be tapping into. What this is gonna be doing, it's gonna be a 5-volt reference, a signal, and a ground for the PCM. And that's what's gonna tell the PCM the pressure in the system and whether or not the AC is gonna come on. After it gets the reading from this, from there, it's going to send power to the compressor and turn it on. Wiring the compressor is really easy. At the connector, you could just put a ground terminal and like ground it right to the block. And then for the power, you're going to want to run the wire off the compressor into the car or wherever you're going to have the relay. And that is going to be spliced into the number 18 terminal on the red connector of the PCM. So you're going to have your wire coming off the third gen controls going to the red connector. Then you're going to have another wire coming out going over to your relay that you're going to want to splice in with the power coming off your compressor. Now once those are teed together, you're going to want to connect them both to the relay, and now this is what's going to send power through the relay and to the compressor. By having this tapped in here, that's what's going to tell the PCM that the compressor is running. Now for the relay, if you don't know much about relays, you're not sure how they work, this diagram really makes it extremely simple, because on the relay, the legs are going to be labeled with these numbers, 85, 86, 87, and 30. So you really can't do it wrong. It shows you right here on the diagram which wires are going to which number on the relay, so you know how to wire it accordingly. Now the hot ignition run is going to be ignition power coming from anywhere in the car. You could tap off the harness or an ignition wire underneath the dash. Wherever you take it from, you need ignition power coming into this relay. And then on that, the one side of the relay, the 86 and the 30, we're going to be splitting that off, and both legs on that side are going to be getting the 12 volt ignition power. Once you have that side done, you have power coming into your relay. The rest is going to be controlled by the PCM. Now you have power on one side, but there's no ground. Now that's where the computer is going to come in, because once the computer reads the signal from the pressure sensor and everything's all good, it wants to put the AC on for you, then it's going to ground pin 43. It's going to ground the relay, and then that's going to close it and send power through to the compressor, and then tell the PCM, okay, the compressor came on, the AC is working. And that's really it. It's a really simple diagram. The only kind of hard thing to figure out is the pressure sensor, because it's a 3-wire sensor, and getting to know which wire's which in order to connect them to the computer the right way, that's really the only, that's like the hardest part of the whole system. But luckily I did it before, so I could tell you exactly where these wires need to go. All right, so the vacuum pump's been going for about 40 minutes now. We're at full vacuum. I'm just gonna turn it off so you can hear me, and then I'll go into the details about wiring up the pressure switch. All right, so the pump's off. I'm just gonna leave this sitting now for maybe 15-20 minutes, see if this drops. So now wiring up the pressure switch. Now here are the wires. I ran this. Now this didn't come with the harness. These are my own wires I ran out of from under the dash from the computer over here to where my pressure switch is. Now something to know, at least on my car, mine's an 86, but I didn't have a place to mount this. Now I'm not sure how the 3rd gen system works, if this, because I still have the pressure switch on the accumulator here, because this is all integrated in 3rd gen harness. I'm pretty sure this isn't doing anything anymore, but I just left it on here just because I had the connector. But this isn't going to be doing anything. What's going to be controlling the AC is this 4th gen pressure switch. Now, as I said, I didn't have a place to mount this. This is supposed to go on the high pressure side of the system. And on the 3rd gen, this is a low pressure switch over here. So what I ended up doing was it's the same exact thread as the high side pressure fitting. So as you see, I have my this is where I have my retrofit fitting screwed on. What I do is when I'm working on the AC, I just unscrew this and I screw the retrofit fitting on. Then when I'm done and I have the refrigerant in, I'll just screw this back on so the AC works. So that's the way I got around it. You're probably gonna have to do the same thing unless you have like a different line and you have 2 ports in it. My car didn't, so I have to swap it out, but it doesn't really matter because I'm filling this up with cans, so you don't want to charge it through the high pressure side with the cans anyway. So after everything's vacuumed down, I'm just going to pull the high side off, put this on, put the connector on, and then we'll charge it through the low side. But anyway, back to the wiring. So the way this thing is going to get wired up is as follows. Now I didn't know, I couldn't remember exactly where all the wires went, so I pulled out my voltmeter, I did a continuity test, I checked all the pins, and I have it exactly, and I figured out exactly where they have to go for you guys. Now this here, this little diagram I drew, this is a connector view of this the connector side of the pressure switch. All right, I had to put the vacuum pump back on. People are playing music, so I didn't want the phone picking that up, but hope you guys can still hear me. So here is how this thing is going to get wired. Now, looking at my little diagram of the connector side of the switch, the top left part is going to be the 45 pin off the blue PCM connector. And if you look here with the voltmeter, top left pin, that's 5 volts with the ignition on. And then the next pin is going to be directly to the right of that, and that's going to be number 57 on the red side of the PCM. Now this one you're not going to have to pin yourself, because this wire is being tapped into the purple wire on the air intake temperature sensor. Now if you come over here, here is the connector for the air intake temperature sensor, and that purple wire right there, you're just going to you know, cut the insulation off a little bit and tap into that. I did that right over here. That's my wire coming from the PCM, and that is going to be the second wire in the pressure switch. And then the final wire, which is the bottom one here that's all alone, that one is going to be pin 14 on the red side of the PCM connector. And those are your 3 wires. That's really the most difficult part of wiring this up, is getting those wires right. But this little diagram right here is going to help you label those wires and get this thing hooked up. So now on to actually getting these wires into the connectors on the PCM. All right, so you have the diagram, you know where all the wires are going. Now it's time to actually tap them into the PCM connectors. Now this is really easy to do. It might seem a little intimidating, but believe me, it's not. What you're going to need to do in order to get the wires actually pinned in the connector is first you're going to have to get these little pins. Now to get to them, very simply, on the connector, these red pieces or the blue pieces, when you're doing the blue side, they just pop off. There's little tabs on the end here. Get in there with a little flathead, push these little tabs in, and then this just comes off, no problem. You can see the guide there where the tab's actually holding it on. Once you have these off, you can actually get to the pins. You can see the little tabs. These are what actually hold the pins in place. So if you're going to depin this for any reason, you just pull those tabs up, and then you can pull each wire out individually. On the other side here, you could see where I actually tapped in these 3 wires that are separate. That's my own AC wiring. I used really thick wires when I did this. I didn't have anything else on hand, and I just wanted my AC to go. This has been probably it's been 4, maybe close to 5 years since I did this. But you could just use regular wires, like the same gauge as the rest of the PCM. And as you can see, all the pins are numbered. So you can see that purple one right there, number 57. This is already here from the PCI conversion harness. So we're just going to tap into that in the bay as I showed you before. And then for the rest of them, we're going to be pinning them ourselves. And very simply, to get this in here, you're going to want to go on eBay. They sell these little pins. Just search LS1 PCM pin. I'm going to link them down in the description anyway. But very simply, you're going to take your wire, these little like rubber things, that's just a grommet. Now you're going to leave that in there. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, but there are little pinholes going through those things. So they are pierced to let the pin go through. And very simply, you're just going to, after you have them crimped, you're going to just slide each wire into the correct number as the diagram shows. And then they're going to just slide right through. They're going to click right into place, and that's it. Once you have them all in there, very simply, you're just going to go pop this guy back on, and that's it. Plug it back into the PCM. Just want to make sure you label each one, or do them one at a time. Pin one, run it into the engine bay, hook it up where it needs to go. Make sure you double check everything. Have the battery disconnected while you're doing this, just in case you accidentally cross a wire or something. But once everything in here is pinned, just connect them to where they're supposed to go, wire up the relay, run it to the controls, the compressor, and the switch, and then that's it. You can plug this back in, you're ready to go and charge up the system. All right, so the vacuuming's all done. I had this thing going for like 45 minutes, and then I had it sitting here for about a half hour. You can see we're still at 30, so I know for sure there aren't any leaks. But just a tip, if you're working on your own car and the refrigerant keeps leaking out and you can't find a leak anywhere, you vacuum it down, everything looks good like this. One thing to check, and what's usually the problem, is these Schrader valves that are inside the fittings here. Now what happens is over time, I mean, you could go years and years without having to touch the AC, and then maybe you develop a leak at one time, you have to change a part, you refill the system. The little Schrader valves in here, after you press them down and fill the system up, they can get stuck and they won't bounce back, and then over time they start leaking. Even without touching them, just over time they can get weak and they start leaking, or the seals get eaten up. And with everything hooked up, you're not going to see that leak because the system is, because the gauges are hooked up to the valves. So this is going to tell you if there's a leak anywhere in the system aside from those valves. The only way you're going to know if that's leaking, you fill the system up, pull off the fitting, and then you have refrigerant hissing out through those valves. So a cheap fix is just replace the little Schrader valves when you're opening the system up. They're only a few bucks, and it's going to save you a lot of headaches after you fill the system up later. So being we're all vacuumed down, I'm not going to be needing the high side anymore. I'm just going to close this valve because we're going to be charging through the low side. And as I said, I got to pull this off of here along with the retrofit fitting that I just kind of screwed on there by hand. So this is going to come off, and I'm going to put my high pressure switch on here. Okay, that's on there. I'm just going to plug it in now. Perfect. Also, the reason why we're not going to need the high is because we're charging through the low side. You don't want to use these cans on the high side because this is going to build a lot of pressure and you can blow that can up. Always charge through the low side when you're using these cans like this. But we got our high side closed off. I'm just going to close off the low side now. And we're going to disconnect the hose from the vacuum pump and connect our little fitting, and this is what's going to go on the can. Turn this down, that pierces the hole, and that's going to let the refrigerant in. Okay, so I got the can hooked up. Now, as for the capacity of this system, I'm really not sure what it's going to take. The R12 system takes 2¼ pounds. 134A, it's going to take less. Plus I have the smaller hoses and the different compressor. I'm really not sure what the capacity is going to be. I have 2¼ pounds exactly here. I'm going to start out with 2 cans, about 1.5 pounds, see what we're looking at on the gauges. It's like 70 degrees today, so we're probably going to be looking at somewhere between the high 20s to low 30s. Right now I'm going to put the car on, put the AC on. We're going to turn this down, pierce the can, and that's going to let the refrigerant into the system. Hopefully we'll see our compressor turn on. Now the system isn't going to turn on because there's no pressure in it. Once we start putting the refrigerant in and the pressure sensor detects it, then it's going to turn the compressor on. So I'm going to pierce this now. So refrigerant is in the hose. Now as I open this up, we'll see this shoot up as the refrigerant goes in. There it goes. But I'm just going to keep shaking this up, let it suck the whole can in. We'll take a look, see if it's cooling. I'm going to have to add at least one more, and then we'll see what the pressures are reading. All right, so it is the next day. The system is charged up, and it is working great. Taking a look at our pressures, we're sitting right at about 25, 26 PSI. On the low side, compressor running. Accumulator is ice cold. High side's hot. I got my pusher fans working. Coming around inside the car, I have the windows down because it's not that warm today. I'm just putting extra load on the system and see how it cools. Blower on high. We're looking at just a hair under 50 degrees. I was actually coming home last night with it, and on medium blower with the windows up on recirculate, I got it down to like 30 degrees, which is like insanely cold. So it's working absolutely fantastic, but there are a few things I want to go over that I ran into yesterday, which is why I'm finishing the video today. So let me shut the car down and I'll go through what happened. All right, so yesterday after I put in the 2 cans of refrigerant, the compressor came on and I noticed the accumulator was ice cold. Everything, the system seemed to be working fine. The condenser was hot, low side was cold, but for some reason I wasn't getting cold air out of the vents. Now the blower was working and air was coming out, but it was maybe the ambient temperature yesterday was around 70 degrees. Out of the vent it was like 65, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. It took me a little time, but what I figured out what it was the evaporator. So here's the old evaporator that I took out of the car, and as you can see, it has this foam around here. And when I swapped the new one in, I took the foam off the front. I couldn't get it off the side, so I just left it. I figured, what's this stuff gonna do? You know, the foam here is sealing it off from the air coming out of the box. As long as everything's in there, it should still cool fine. So what was happening was I ended up taking the top of the evaporator off, and the air was coming out of the blower into the box, but because I didn't have that foam along the top and the sides, literally all the blower air was just going over the space, right over the evaporator and into the car instead of flowing through the fins. The same thing for the back, it was just going behind it. I was able to pull this off without evacuating the system. I just took the bolts out, and the top piece is plastic, it's not fiberglass, so it's pretty flexible, but I was able to get it out and over the accumulator without having to evacuate the system. And once I did that, I went to Lowe's and I got some window foam, like weather stripping, and I just went and stuck that all around the top of the evaporator to seal it up against the top of the box, as well as the back and the sides. And if you look here on the old one, the AC in this car never really cooled that well. It was working, but I was never really 100% happy with it. And I'm looking at this now, and it looks like the foam on this side actually came off, as well as on the back at one point. It probably just deteriorated and fell apart in the box. You can see this piece is like totally broken. So that's probably why the AC was never that great in this car. All the air, instead of getting forced through the fins, which you can see are pretty tiny, it was just finding the easiest way out, which is up and over and behind. So now that I have the whole thing sealed up with foam nice and tight, all that blower air is going to be forced through the evaporator and right into the car. Alright, so getting AC in your LS Swap 3rd Gen, that's pretty much how you do it. I really hope that this video helped a lot of you guys out. I went over a lot of the things that I had trouble with when I started doing this to my car, especially the thing with the wiring. I couldn't figure out which wires were which going to the high pressure sensor, or which ones had to go to the PCM. But I did find that wiring diagram on thirdgen.org. I'm going to link that in the description below. I'm going to link the pressure switch, the connector, as well as the fittings and the hose length I used in case you want to use this exact part. While I'm at it, I'm also going to link the evaporator, accumulator, and condenser. Just make sure you're going to change your evaporator. Go ahead and get that foam to seal that up before you put the cover on. So that's going to do it for now. Be on the lookout for more blower videos. I'm getting a lot of parts in. I got most of the stuff in my fuel system in. I got my new drive shaft in. A lot of stuff is on its way. So those videos are going to start coming out more and more frequently as those parts start coming in. Hopefully in a few weeks, I'll actually get the blower on the car. And then I already have my appointment set for the beginning of August to have the thing tuned. So I'm kind of in a race now to get it finished before then. If I don't, I could just reschedule it, but that's the date I am aiming for. If you don't follow me on Instagram, link is going to be in the description below. I'm always posting photos of the car when I'm shooting videos, when parts come in. So if you don't follow me there, you're going to want to go check that out. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.